everyone, this is Maggie again. In today's video, I would like to share solutions that may make it easier for blind people to survive first weeks in the new workplace. Before I move to the main part of this recording, I would like to mention few points. Firstly, it is necessary to highlight that I am not an employment advisor and that I share my experience as a totally blind person who is in full-time employment and who went through the process of starting a new job several times. Secondly, we all need to remember that everybody is different, everybody's situation is totally different, and every workplace is different. And this is why it is difficult to develop a list of universal tips and solutions, but I still hope that everyone will find something useful in that video. Thirdly, I would like to mention that some of the solutions that I will share today are obvious, but great majority of tips and solutions that I will discuss did not even cross my mind before I started my employment career. And I believe that many of them will be also new to you. And this is why I would like to encourage all of you to watch this video till the very end. So the first tip that I would like to share today is all about ensuring that as soon as you accepted the job offer, you meet with your new line manager and that you both discuss all of the aspects of your responsibilities at work and all of the aspects of adjustments and support that you may benefit from. I believe that at some point you already had some of these discussions, but now when you were offered a job and you accepted the offer, it is essential that you discuss all of these things in a lot of detail. So, for instance, when discussing accessibility of computer systems, it is important to discuss and test accessibility of every software that you may need to use, every database, and also pay attention in what format documents are saved in, and so on and so forth. This may help you to choose the screen reader that will be most accessible and most compatible with the software and databases that are used at your workplace. Also, ensure to pay attention to other equipment that you may need to use. So, for instance, in many offices, to use the printer, we need to enter the key, the PIN code, but many printers have a touch screen that is totally inaccessible for people who have no vision. And the touch screens are also used in other situations. So, for instance, sometimes when we need to enter a room or a certain area in the building, again, we need to enter the PIN code. And again, there may be a touch screen that is inaccessible. So it is important to see how we can overcome these barriers and how we can make these things accessible. I will also mention another thing, which is a detail, but it is a very important detail. And this thing is a signing in and out spreadsheets. And some companies just use the swipe card. So you just swipe your card to sign in, swipe your card to sign out. But in some places, you need to basically sign the signing sheet with the pen. And this is really important because these records are not only used by your employer to check if and when you came to work, but they are also used by fire brigades in case of the fire. And the fire brigade is using these records to check whether they supported everybody with leaving the building, with exiting the building, or whether somebody is still trapped in. So you see, this is a good example of something which is a detail, but this is a very important detail. When you, another thing that I need to mention is that if you have an opportunity to use any support with assessing which screen reader or which equipment may be useful to you in your work. By equipment, I mean like a braille note taker or any other equipment that you may find helpful, or like a recorder. Then, of course, use the support of the assessors, because they have really good tips and good ideas, and they know a lot about, available equipment. But ensure that the final decision is yours and that you are comfortable with the final decision. If you have opportunity to test different screen readers and different equipment, also take this opportunity, because that will give you a good idea what will work for you. When discussing with your manager the ways that you need to overcome different barriers and the ways you may be supported with this, also remember to mention all of the skills that you have but your employer may be not aware of. And remember that for us blind people, many things are obvious. So for instance, we know that we can touch type on a QWERTY keyboard. But you see, for our employer, you may be the first blind person they ever met. So they may be not aware of many things, and this is really helpful if we may share with them all of that information. So for instance, if you need graphics at work, if you use some diagrams, you may also share how these diagrams may be, how you may make them accessible. So for instance, I use the glue gun because it is cheap and because it's super accessible, and everyone can help me to make a diagram with this. And I always share it because, I always think, that in the end it is my responsibility to share information that for me is obvious, but for other people maybe not obvious at all. Now, the second point that I would like to mention is that as soon as you accepted the job offer, ensure that you start completing all of the paperwork, all of the forms, and all of the procedures that will enable you to apply for grants and other types of support that you may receive at work. So, for instance, in the UK, we are very, very lucky to have access to work, and access to work helps blind people with getting right equipment, right screen readers, braille displays, or other equipment. We may also get help, so we can have an assistant at work for some hours, and we can also claim help, financial help with transport if public transport is inaccessible or is really, really difficult. In other countries, there may be other schemes, so make sure that you are aware of them, make sure that you are aware of all of the procedures, and as I said, make sure that you complete all of the paperwork that you need to complete, but also make sure that you share all of that information with your employer, and if they need to complete some paperwork, I would say it may be worth to support them with that, because again, it may be a totally new thing for them. And I don't remember whether I already said that, but yeah, so just in case I will say that again. Remember that these things may take a lot of time. Sometimes this paperwork is very complex. Sometimes you have to provide lots of evidence. So you start as soon as you can. And also sometimes it may take a lot of time for the decision to be made. So again, I would just do it as soon as possible, so you don't experience any delays and any difficulties because of any possible delays. Sorry that this point was so messy. Okay, so the third point is all about ensuring that before we start our new job, we master the route from home to work and from work to home. And we need to remember that once we start a new job, we will be very busy and very tired with learning new software, new procedures, new ways of doing things, and it will be really useful for us to be comfortable with our route to work and also to feel safe on it. Now, the fourth point is all about ensuring that during the initial weeks we allow more time for our travel, for our journeys, because as you all know, it is more a risk that we may get lost or confused when we are traveling on a new route, and we may need some time to find our way. And also there may be some obstacles that we may not expect, so it's always useful to have this extra time. The fifth point is all about ensuring, if possible, that we learn our way around our workplace before we start the job, if possible. If the building is relatively easy to learn and not very big, I would recommend to learn all of the building before we start. But if the area or the building is complex or large, it is helpful to start with the basics. So it is helpful to start from learning where the toilet is, where the kitchen is, where your area is, like your office area, your work area, and also where your manager's office is, in case you needed to ask for advice on something. And then you may build on this knowledge and expand your skills and learn about new areas and new routes about the building. Then in the sixth point that I would like to mention is all about the fact that in some workplaces it is really important to throw waste in correct bins, and this is particularly important in medical clinics and maybe some other places that I just didn't think of. So sorry about that. But before you start your work, it may be helpful to check it out. And if different bins look similar, and if they move bins a lot around, it may be helpful to label them in Braille so you avoid any difficulties that may occur. Then the 7th point is all about learning about all of the things that you may need for your own comfort, like for instance learning where is the fridge so you can store there your food, then about where is the kettle, how to operate the kettle, then where is the sink. And knowing all of that things may help you to feel more comfortable during this initial time, especially during this initial days at work, and more independent. And also, it is important that you look after your well-being, that that you can make yourself drink, that you can eat your lunch, and that you look after yourself during work time as well. The 8th point is all about guide dog at work, and I know that about this point I could, and maybe I will at some point, make a separate video, but today I just wanted to mention few basic points. So the first thing is ensure that before you start your work, you know where you can walk your guide dog, where the guide dog may have a wee, and that you know where to throw the poo. So where is the correct bin for that? And that you know where you can put the drinking dish and food dish for your dog, where you can put the bed for your dog. And it is also very important to share information about the guide dog with your work colleagues. So it may be useful to explain a little bit about how the guide dog is supporting us with getting around. It may be really useful to share that it is not helpful to distract the dog, and that it may be really dangerous for a dog's health if somebody was feeding the dog. And if you feel uncomfortable about saying some of these things yourself, you may ask your dog trainer, your guide dog school for support, and they may agree to come to your workplace and share some of the information with your colleagues. And also another great idea is to ask for permission to put some posters in your workplace. And many guide dog schools have these posters that explain everything about the guide dog and about do's and don'ts. And the good thing about this solution is that whenever you have a new person in the building, they already can see that information, and everybody is in a way constantly reminded about all of this information whenever they look at the poster. Another thing about the guide dog is that it may be really important to ask and to check whether your colleagues or some of your colleagues may have an allergy to dog fur, and it's useful to discuss this in advance, because that may help to decide on seating arrangements in the office. And it is really important that we feel comfortable and that we are supported and safe, but it's also important that we consider others people's needs, and especially their health needs. Okay, now the 9th point is really important during this period of time where you already started to work. So usually in my first day, I ask everybody that whenever they speak to me, they also introduce themselves. And this is particularly helpful if the team is very large and we need to memorize voices of many people and when we meet many people at the same time. And this techniques really works, and you are then never confused who is speaking to you, and then you quickly learn to recognize people by their voices. Number 10 is all about being proactive when your colleagues would like to support you in some way, but they are not sure how, or when you need help, but people are not sure how they could help you. So, for instance, as an example, imagine that somebody would like to guide you somewhere, but they're not sure how to do it. It's cool to be proactive about this and just to show them. And if somebody, let's say, does it in correct way, it is also helpful to explain it. So if, for instance, somebody grabs your arm, I think it's okay in a nice way to mention that actually, it is more helpful for me when I take your arm. Or if people, let's say, want to show you something on the computer and they are like using visual vocabulary. So for instance, they're saying, okay, this is like green icon in the left top corner. It is okay to mention that. Okay, could you tell me the name of that icon? Because I just look for it with my keyboard shortcuts. Or if if you could tell me how can I move there with tabs. Sometimes knowing location of the icon is useful when we are using a touch screen like an iPad or tablet, but when we use shortcuts it isn't. But sighted people may be not aware of this, so again it is an opportunity to share with them that information. And then point 11 is about labeling some of your belongings in Braille, and I will mention what I mean by this. So basically sometimes people bring to work their tea in a box or coffee jar or lunch box, or some people leave some folders around, and some of these objects are really hard to identify whether it is my tea box or somebody else's tea box, or my lunch box or somebody else's lunch box. So it is just safe to label your stuff in Braille, and it helps you to ensure that you are not taking somebody else's stuff by accident. And I'm also always worried that I may take somebody's tea or lunch by mistakes. And when I label my things, then I'm sure that I'm not accidentally taking things that belong to other people. The next point is about labeling some of your belongings in black print, in regular print, I mean. And I will explain more about this. So sometimes, especially if you're hot desking, people may move your things and they may be not aware of the fact that even if they move your things only a little bit, you may be unable to find them. And sometimes I know that, okay, your things may be labeled in Braille, but, to check every folder on a desk, it may be a lot of work, So I sometimes put a note, and I normally do it with my folders, and on that note I put following thing. So I will just give you an example here. So I say, hi, I'm Maggie's folder, and please don't move me, because if you move me, Maggie will never find me again. And then I put a smiley face at the end. And that really helps, because people always see that note, people always remember, and if they need to move my things, they just let me know. They say, oh, sorry, but I had to move your things. Or they move it somewhere else, but then they put it back, or they just basically make sure that they don't move it. The next thing that may be useful to consider is to know what is the color of your coat, handbag, backpack, and maybe some other things. And I know that everyone can recognize their handbag and their backpack and other things with the touch. But if somebody moves your backpack, let's say, it may take a lot of time to find your backpack just using the touch. So it may be much easier just to ask, oh, have you seen my green backpack anywhere, or my orange backpack, or whatever the color is, and that may just save you a lot of time as well. The 14th point is all about labeling important documents and arranging them. So I will also explain it using an example. So if you have a range of documents that you use most frequently, it may be helpful to print several copies of each document and put the copy of one particular document in one Polly Pocket. So for instance, if you have several versions of, I don't know, some contract, put one version in one Polly Pocket, and you can put as many copies of that one version as you can squeeze there, and then label that Polly Pocket. Then if you have second version of some, I don't know, contract, put the copies of second version in another Polly Pocket and again label it. Or if you have some other documents, again, print a few copies, put in a Polly Pocket and label. And in that way, if you're going for a meeting and you are not sure what exactly you will need, you can take your folder, and then when you know what you need, you can just take the correct documents and share them. And I know that it's impossible to have copy of everything, but at least these things that you know that you use most frequently. And also, if you see that you are running low on something, then you can easily notice that and print additional copies, so you're always ready and organized. The 15th point is about safely storing and disposing of documents that include sensitive and personal information. So naturally, we need to protect all of the information and ensure that we don't breach confidentiality in any way. But for blind people, particularly difficult is managing documents that are printed in regular print. And it is always very important to ensure that we store them in lockable places, that we know what is what, and that if we are disposing some documents, that we dispose them in a correct way. So sometimes we put them straight to the shredder, but sometimes we put them in special bins that are locked. So I would recommend to check it out during your first day and ensure that you always follow the correct procedure, because confidential information is a very important thing. The 16th point is about safety again, but different type of safety. So what I would suggest is that when you're new to the building and maybe you're not fully familiar with the layout of the building yet, it may be useful to use a travel mug, and I will explain more about this. So sometimes there is a big distance between the kitchen and the place where you work, your workplace, where you sit, or where, basically you complete your tasks. And sometimes you may need to navigate some corridors, staircases, lift, door. So just in case that you don't bump to anybody or anything, and you don't scald yourself or anybody else with hot water, it is helpful to have a cup that you can just close with the lid, and then even if you walk into something or somebody, then everybody is safe. And also remember that sometimes, especially during the initial time at work, people may not be aware of the fact that you are blind, and they may not move out of your way. So yeah, even if people see you, they may not realize that you can't see them, and that may also cause, like collision and, some accidents. Then the 17th point is about the fact that if the team is large, or if there are many people coming and going, many people who come to your offices for various reasons, it may be helpful to walk at all times with the guide dog or with the cane, even when you are familiar with the building. And my rationale behind is that, you see, you know the building well, you know your way, but there may be somebody standing quietly in the middle of the corridor, and it may be dangerous or awkward if suddenly you walk into them. And it is, many blind people, you can't tell that they are blind, so people have no way of knowing that we can't see. So they have no chance of moving out of our way, and that may just cause some accidents or some awkward situations. So just to be on the safe side, I always have a cane or my dog with me. Well, usually my dog, because now I have a guide dog, so it's always my dog. But then it is clear to everybody that I can't see. My dog also helps me to avoid all of the obstacles, and always remember that people may put things that you may not expect in the middle of the corridor. There may be some deliveries, so things change all the time, and it is important to keep safe and make sure that everybody else is safe. In the 18th point, I would like to encourage all of you to, basically what I want to say is, please never be afraid to ask questions. Everybody who is new, ask questions. It doesn't matter whether we are sighted or blind, we all need to learn, and asking questions is the best way. If you need additional help and support, also don't hesitate to ask for help and support. Great majority of people will be more than happy to support you in any way they can. And also, remember that everybody makes mistakes, and this is a human way. It is a human thing to make mistakes, and the most important thing is to learn from our mistakes. But it's not a good thing to beat yourself up about them. So of course try to limit them, but if they happen, just learn from them. Another thing is to remember that we all need time to learn new things, so be kind to yourself and give yourself this time. And another thing that I wanted to mention is that this list is incomplete. So please continue searching for your own solutions, for your own tips. Continue asking people who may be working in a similar position to yours. And continue asking people who may be in similar situation to your situation. You may consider asking some organizations that support blind people to employment for additional, support and suggestions. And just be open to, new ideas, new ways of doing things, and new suggestions. At the end of this video, I want to wish you all good luck. And remember that if you continue working hard on your goals, you will achieve everything you want to achieve. If you enjoyed that video, please do subscribe to my channel. I am planning more videos in the near future. And if you think that somebody else may benefit from that information, share this video with them, and I would really appreciate this. So thank you for watching, thank you for your attention today, and I will see you soon in my next recording. Bye bye.